Nobody say anything about candy.
What'd you say? We're live. Aijne, stop interrupting. Hi, everyone. I hope people are joining us again. I know it's been a long summer. We're all trying to figure out what this is. So tonight, as you might have read in our description, we're going to talk about self-care and mental health and things like that. And I figured it was also important to note that we are not mental health professionals. We are not here giving medical advice. We just thought it was a really relevant topic for all of us to discuss and, you know, chat about how we've been personally affected, as well as maybe strategies, techniques of how to deal with life. So I'm Rebecca Steele with Lucy Black Entertainment.
I'm Lauren Bertel, also Lucy Black Entertainment.
I am Aijne Williams, Upper Octave Productions.
And I am Jarreau Williams, and I'm an actor.
It sounded like you were trying to choose which one you were going to.
I really was. I was like, who am I tonight? I don't even know anymore.
Whoever you want.
You just be whoever you want to be. Am I a singer tonight? Do I even know anymore?
I want to talk about my vegetable garden. What am I doing?
Hey, we all have COVID pivots.
And all of our followers left.
Right.
Because they're going to build their gardens. That's what they're going to do.
He does this.
Self-care.
Well, welcome back, people. Look, man, it's crazy because we were just sitting here talking about burnout and how there's so much mental fatigue because there's so much happening. There's so much of the Black Lives Matter movement. There's so much with just the presidential election upcoming, and with COVID and everybody, you know, trying to social distance, and then other people not caring. And so we were just sitting back talking about all these things and pandemic breakouts within colleges and stuff like that. And, you know, because we are all leaders in our own right and in our own professions and in our own circles, there's a lot of weight. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of conversation. And we're sure that it's similar for a lot of you guys as well, that there's so much weight on you guys. There's so much stress, whether you have kids, whether you have, you know, family members who have gotten sick, whether you have people who are affected by, you know, racial injustices or, you know, sexist injustices, or whatever the case is. You got people, you know, losing their jobs and not having bill money and all kinds of things. We've all been affected, and we're all susceptible to mental burnout, to, you know, negative self-care. And so this conversation is about self-care. It's about the things that we're doing to take care of ourselves, and hopefully some things that you guys can do to take care of yourselves as well. And in saying that, once again, I want to echo what Rebecca said, that we are not professionals in this, in the self-care profession. And we don't want to portray that or act like we are, but we do want to speak about it. We want to address some things. We want to enlighten some perspectives on it. And we want to give you guys some things from what we're doing and from our lives. So hopefully you guys can relate to them and be affected as well. So before we go any further, on behalf of us, this is, once again, Let Us Breathe. We thank you guys for joining us. We welcome you guys every single time that we do one of these. You know, you got some people who are like, who are you guys to be saying this and talking about this? But then you have other people who come up to, especially me personally, and like, you guys are doing such a wonderful thing. And I always tune in, and I'm so grateful that there's something like this that I can tune into, that I can, you know, draw some nuggets from, and then I can draw some strength from, and be affected in a positive way. And more so than anything, I think the good part about this is people know that there are other people in their shoes, that they can relate to somebody. So once again, we thank you guys. We really want to elicit your comments, your questions. Please feel free to hop on the live and to comment and to shoot your questions across. We'd love to see, just say hey if you want to. We'd love to give shout outs to you guys. And yeah, hopefully we can include you guys in this conversation as well. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that before we get going. Cool. Cool. So what I want to do is I want to self-care because there's so many different compartments to it. And what we are going to kind of sort of focus on isn't necessarily physical or emotional. A lot of it is more so mental health or mental self-care. And it could incorporate the other things like Lauren was saying earlier, like physical fitness or working out or something that helps you gain your sanity or remain sane or have positive mental health. So we kind of want to focus on those things. And actually, early on, I want to go ahead and throw it to Jarreau. To be completely open, he was kind of struggling this week. So Jarreau, I wanted you to not necessarily take us too deep down your path, but let us know the surface level of your struggles and kind of some things that you're doing to help overcome some of the negative mental health things that you've been dealing with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I appreciate each of you for just having this platform available, because I think to kind of sum up what I'm about to talk about, we've all kind of spent some time in isolation during this period. And some of us may be living with significant others, or we may have, families and things like that. But we've all kind of had to look deep down within ourselves during this period to really find out who we really are and kind of what adversity brings out of us. And so with that being said, I pride myself in my work, and I pride myself in the effort that I put into that work. And sometimes that can lead to burnout very fast, because there's so many things that I want to do in this life, and there's so many things that I want to achieve. And I feel like kind of as the days go on, there's times where I kind of see the window closing. And that's a very unfortunate feeling to have, especially when you see people who may be younger than you or have that extra opportunity that you never got, and like fully walking through that door and doing all the things that you want to do. And I'm sure there's people who may be older than me that are looking at me and saying the same thing. But with that burnout comes kind of like a depressive downfall. And like I was telling you all earlier when we were not live, you have to treat depression and mental illness kind of like when you have a cold or when you have the flu. It can happen from any trigger. And with this period, I've had a lot of them. There's been a lot of triggers all across the board. And it can start as a trigger, and that specific trigger is what can start the spiral. And you don't know when the most extreme phase is going to happen. It just does. And at that point, it's like, what do you do? Do you fight it head on? Do you go talk to somebody, or do you kind of repress into your shell? And in most cases for me, when I have these depressive episodes, I don't hide it. That's what I do. I kind of repress because I don't like people to see me in that state. And a lot of times I'm always the one that's trying to uplift everybody because I don't want my loved ones feeling the way I feel. So I've been going through it like these past few weeks, because I think many of us expected this to be over by now. And we can't just force it to be done. It's not. Without the testing, without actually knowing the facts and knowing what this virus is actually about. And then also all the dominoes that have fallen because of it, because we've been home, and now we can really process and expose our weaknesses and the faults of others. There's a lot to process with that too. But in terms of how I've been able to handle that care and kind of move forward through it, you have to get to a point where you tell yourself, no matter how much work you have going on, you just have to shut it down. It's hard because for us as self-employed musicians, there is no paid time off. There is no paid personal health day that you can just write an email to your boss and say, hey, I'm just going to take today off because I got to get my mind right. We are our own bosses.
Right.
You know, and it's not just us that we're thinking about when we take that back seat. There's other people who, if we're entrepreneurs, that we're helping to feed. You know, we're helping to put that little extra money on people's plates. And I know the people who work for me and with me don't see it the same way that I do because they're also doing other things. But my mind is like, every day that I don't work at something,
yeah,
somebody can't eat, somebody can't live, somebody's life can't ascend the way they want to because they're depending on me. And that's hard. Like even with your own family members, because as my family gets older, I'm thinking I want to achieve things so that they can be proud and that help them have better than they had. Those are the type of visions I have. So when you can't achieve those things because you kind of seem like you're in your own way, it almost just cascades everything. So you just have to tell yourself, all right, the work is still going to be there. I just need to shut it down. I need to shut it down for a little bit. Nobody's really going to know because everybody's focused on their own things. And then when I'm ready to come back to it, I'll do that. And honestly, like one of the best things I've done is I just had to tell myself, like, you know what? Yes, I'm going to watch 5 episodes of Game of Thrones today. And each episode is an hour. And it's like 5 hours goes by and your mind wants to say, I didn't do anything. But I'm sorry, like you gotta do what is best for you. You gotta do what makes you feel good, because if you're not feeling good, everybody's gonna start seeing it. It's gonna start wearing, not just on yourself, but on the people you care about. And so, you know, meditation, prayer, but you gotta kind of get within yourself to figure out what you need to do to get out of the episode that you're in. So I don't know what, I'm curious what you all have done, if anything has worked for you all during these past couple of months. Because I think we could all use whatever resources may be helpful that we may not know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, I know we talked about this a bit before, kind of the roller coaster that has been the Black Lives Matter movement, COVID, everything that we're dealing with at once, and being in isolation at home. And, you know, March, we were like, okay, yep, this sucks, but okay, it might not be that long. April, a little bit less excited. May, pretty sad. Then you get into June, July, August, and it's like full not good. And as a generally positive and happy person, just seeing this kind of no end in sight with the way that America has been dealing with COVID in general and how that relates to us in the events world, you know, it has been really hard recently. I'm working it out, but honestly, I just walking outside, getting away from all of the bad news, away from all of electronics, the screens that we're staring at all day because we have to, because everything is virtual, being with nature, taking a walk. So it's the physical, it's the mental, it's the shutting everything out, which then helps with my emotional health, my physical health. And it's, you know, it's just been a big thing that I've tried to take some time out either in the mornings or the evenings when it's cooler. Obviously it's so hot that it doesn't work every day. But that, and along with the meditation, just taking, you know, 3 to 5 minutes, if you have, you know, out of your day, whatever time you decide, it's again, you have to shut everything out and you just listen and you close your eyes and you breathe and you really pay attention to the breath and, you know, everything that you're feeling and thinking, and you just have to kind of let it go. And so those have been some of the things that have been really good for me. Food, not so much. I've been really bad about food, but yeah.
We see it. Your head is kind of starting to, it's getting a little, never mind. Never mind. So I'm just playing, Lauren.
It's all in her hair.
All of it, so much.
All in the hair.
So Lauren mentioned COVID, and all right, people, listen. This was not on our script, but I kind of want to pivot and go here because it's so relevant. And I don't know if this is going to be helpful, but it's kind of a PSA because it's extremely frustrating to me. I want to talk about COVID for just a second, if you guys are cool with that. If not, we'll kind of bring it back to the
relevant
conversation. But before we got on, we had a really good conversation about schools restarting, about athletics restarting, let's say like baseball, a bunch of people catching it and getting sick and all that kind of stuff, different concerts, parties, and all that. I want to kind of go to you, Rebecca, on this. Jarreau mentioned that there are so many other countries that are able to restart that they've been affected by the pandemic, and they've been able to manage it for one reason or another. But in America, it's such a lingering issue and a lingering problem. And it seems like we can't sit still long enough in order for there to be a greater good. And I don't want to go too much further than that because I want to let you guys speak on it. But Rebecca, how do you feel about the progression of this virus and its potential end so that we can get back to work, like the timetable, in addition to the people's mindset in actually doing their part in not spreading it? Like, what's your kind of feel on that?
So I think that what's interesting about, like, I know there's so many questions you just asked me. To clue everyone in on the other countries reopening that we talked about, I think Taiwan was brought up. Taiwan shut their borders as soon as they found out. And part of it's because they were decimated by SARS. So they knew something was going on. They shut their borders and they were basically not affected. But that's because they took so much action and extreme action from the very beginning. Like no one in, no one out. Like that was all they did. And that was just my memory from when it started. So if that's wrong, I apologize. So what I have noticed is that the heart of a lot of what I think is going wrong is Americans buying into all these conspiracy theories of it being fake, of it being a hoax, of it being a ploy by one political party or another to get what they want somewhere. And then also like saying that this is us denying them their freedoms. And that was something we did talk about prior to going live, which I think most people agree, like that's something we love about America, right? Like you can't have the voice that you want in China. You can't say what you're thinking. You can't, I mean, everything's banned and censored and all that. And that is something we should hold on to in the States. But when it comes down to a global pandemic and our entire economy shut down and our entire society is shutting down, especially in the events world that we were hit first and we're not going to open until last, it's like, get over yourself. You know, it is so frustrating.
The selfishness.
That we can't pull together and actually make moves collectively that can help everyone. I think the most frustrating thing I've seen is people posting, which I'm like rarely ever on Facebook because I can't take it. But I saw someone post some lady holding a sign who's not wearing a mask and said, you're wearing your mask, so why should I have to wear mine? And I'm just like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Like, I don't understand. Clearly, science is being disregarded, which I won't get into that because that's a topic for another day and probably with drinks. You know, science is a thing, people. It's real. And there's people dying, a lot of people dying. So the fact that we can't do these basic things, I don't know why we're reopening schools. I don't know why people want to have bars reopening, especially in the hotspot areas. Like, I've actually been really proud of DC. Our numbers have been low and they've stayed low. I was looking at the numbers the other day of the places that are hotspots now. They didn't actually have the full wave that we had at the beginning. And I don't know if that's because we do have a lot of people from New York and the hotspots that were hit early. So yeah, so I'm frustrated. And I think that, I think we're doing everything. We even had a call today with another wedding planner we love. We're doing everything we can to even prepare for when we are asked to go back out. And how can we protect our team? You know, because if there's people at a wedding who don't care, how do we take measures to care more? You know, and you know, Lauren was mentioning this example of a band all playing behind drum shields. Like everyone had their own drum shield, yep. Which, you know, we can't pull off at most weddings. But it got us thinking. We were like, well, what about the face shields for our singers? And what about some of these other precautions? Because it's like, yeah, we want to work. Like, trust me, we want to work probably more than anyone in a lot of ways. Especially like we're talking about self-care. Music is an outlet for almost all of us. And to not be able to perform.
Not be able to go to live music, to listen to live music. I can't tell you how much live streaming and past concerts I've been watching, and I sit in my basement, I turn on the nice speakers, but it's just not the same. And after this many months of it, it's, you know, that is something that gives me life. That is my emotional, mental health. And, you know, missed a lot of festivals over the summer, and that, you know, it's huge. It is what it is.
Yeah. As a performer,
Lucy Black concerts on the TV all the time. That's weird.
Right.
And as a performer, it's soul crushing, because singing is my life. I've been fortunate enough to be very skilled in a lot of different areas. Things that I could probably go to work and do right now if I really wanted to. But there's something about singing and performance that is uncanny. It's above all else. Yeah. Do I want to perform right now? Absolutely, because it's great for my mental health. But at the same time, if we're not doing what is necessary for our physical health, we'll never get back to that point. And just so our viewers out there are very clear, what we're saying right now is not political.
Yeah.
This is about person to person. This is not about parties versus parties and politics versus politics, or candidates versus candidates, because I think the biggest disappointment that I'm seeing right now is how we are. Of course, it's an election year. So whether this was, you know, whether we were in a pandemic or not, there were going to be topics that were going to be polarized or were going to be politicized. But to see the amount of people that are reacting in a way that if you think differently about a certain issue, that you don't love the country, is the most asinine response that I'm hearing these past few months, because it shows how selfish we really are and how much we care more about our personal intentions than we do when we have to put all that stuff aside and really care about the greater good.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, like, just being real about it, what we were just talking about, I'm not excited for sports right now. Because when I'm seeing athletes get tested twice a week, but we've got 300 plus million people in this country and only under 20% of them have been tested, whether they're healthy or sick, that is truly telling. And I mean, we talked about this earlier. I would rather have every American be tested, get all the numbers. Out of 320 million Americans, this is how many people are actually infected. And let's get those people treated, and let's figure out what we need to do to do this, so then we can all get back out and enjoy this stuff, not just where the money is. And I know that's something that Aijne had highlighted earlier, because let's be real, in the events industry, this is our primetime season.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And we can't be a part of it. Like that's been the thing that's been the most disappointing. We were hoping that by the summertime, because we've seen that with a lot of these other countries, it's been 1 to 2 months, and then they've been able to go right back. They've been able to ease back into things. And so I was like, okay, when it came over our waters, came over to our side, it was like, okay, 1 to 2 months, we'll be right back in it. And here we are. It's like, at what point are we going to say what we're doing is not working?
Yeah.
When is that going to change for people?
Well, and it does seem like I'd have to double check this again, fact wise, because I can't even remember what week it was that I read this. I think it was last week. I don't know now.
So you mean 6 months ago?
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
But there are multiple countries that are dealing with a second wave. But it's interesting because I don't think, I know Australia was one, and I know Japan was mentioned.
I have 2 friends in Australia right now, so I can tell you after you go into that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Japan was an interesting one because I was like, well, I thought they weren't hit very hard, and they weren't. And so there was some stat floating out there saying that Japan has 34 times. Has been hit, the second wave, 34 times more, where we're only being hit like a fraction of that. And I was like, well, if they only had 10 cases, yeah, that's probably accurate. So it's like some of these countries it's like they didn't take precautions beyond what they needed to, and then they reopened, and now they're having issues again. And it's just fascinating is probably not the right word, fascinating in a bad way. Say it that way. Let's see how this is going, though, because I think a lot of people are just not taking it seriously, which is really disappointing. And it's kind of disheartening that humanity sucks so bad in general. So
yeah, I mean, we've seen it from many different sides, right? So as I was saying, I have 2 friends in Australia that we're dealing with this, and I was kind of following through as they were talking about what the country was doing. So they had, and this is the thing, because every country's quote unquote outbreak is different.
Yeah.
Like you had New Zealand, for instance, that shut the country down when 2 people were infected.
Yep.
And Australia was kind of similar because they had a couple hundred get infected. Well, there was just a couple hundred students infected at UNC Chapel Hill and Notre Dame just this week. And because of that number, you've got entire countries shutting down.
Right.
But, for some reason, again, we can't get it together. It's like you look at the daily number of cases that countries are having, and you have some of these countries that are a couple hundred, and we're in the tens of thousands per day. And I get it. There are people that are saying that, hey, this virus is not that serious. Some people don't get as sick from it as others. I've seen both sides of this. Personally, been affected by both sides of this. I had a 75-year-old cousin die of COVID in a nursing home, and my younger cousin, who's 31, just got COVID last month, but he's fine. He's fully recovered. So it's like you have a case like that, but then you got the extreme case. The thing where the 2 meet in the middle is you don't know what's going to happen when somebody tests positive.
Yeah.
Just because they test positive don't mean, oh, well, okay, this is what's going to happen. Because we've seen it where my cousin's 31. There's stories about 30-year-olds dying from this and children dying from this. And then you've got stories like 95-year-old World War II vet that's surviving this and, in a battle with this. But the fact of the matter is it's real. Yeah. Doesn't matter what party you're a part of. COVID doesn't know whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. Doesn't care. Yeah. Fact of the matter is it's an illness. It's going to hit your body, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. So we can't keep looking at the party lines when it comes to this. It's like, how can we protect the person next to us? Because some people are saying that 170,000 deaths, it is what it is. I'm saying that's 170,000 people too many.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of where the United States population is, 170,000 people is not a lot. But you're talking about the same amount of deaths as a couple of wars combined.
Yeah.
I mean, even
so
aside from that, if it's one death and it's somebody you care about, that's one too many. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's just one too many. And what frustrates me the most, I'd say, are the people that are kind of like, well, I'll take my chances. I'm not high risk. While that in itself may be valid, the crazy part is there's so many asymptomatic people that are carriers. They're just carriers. They're never going to show any symptoms. They could pass it on to 10, 12, 20 people, not realize it, and cause mass deaths. You know what I'm saying? Just because of their carelessness, because they're willing to take a chance because they're low risk.
Well, and they also can't tell who is high risk. You know what I mean? I think that's the other thing people really aren't paying attention to. I'm technically high risk. My sister's high risk. We have autoimmune diseases, and my sister has diabetes. I mean, that's actually one of the highest risk populations, but anyone looking at her wouldn't know, and so people just assume if you're old. I hate to be so broad with that statement, but it's true. And what's funny is like, this is exactly why I think talking about self-care and mental health is so important, because it's almost this frustration of like, how can we even have mental health when not everyone is actually trying to do their best to help us get through this. And it's like,
you're not able to do the things that do help your health. Like a lot of people, it's going to the gym. Yeah. Some of that's kind of coming back for me. It's not the gym, but, and
but for some it is, you're right. I mean, some people like somebody's therapeutic getaway, like how I was saying, like whether it's binge watching a Netflix show or, walking in your neighborhood or going to the gym or playing video games or, whatever that is.
I want to go on trips. I want to see places and experience things in a new city, but we can't do any of that right now.
I think
try to do many things close by, drive, be safe, be with yourself, get takeout, but it's hard.
But you just said it. Even you trying to do small things, it's be safe, right? So this is like clouded everything we're trying to do, even to take care of your mental health. And it's like, it's this very weird time we're in of dealing with so much that it actually prohibits us from doing the things that can bring us more mental health.
Kind of bringing it back too, because I know like while we're talking about this, because also for us in the events world, and Becca, you had brought up, what do we do to keep our team safe as these events start? Because I mean, obviously that does intertwine with COVID. I just wanted to kind of pinpoint this other thing before we got into that is the biggest thing that I think that 2020 has kind of reaffirmed is our mortality. Because there's a lot of times when, especially for people who are younger, you're walking around and you're thinking, I'm invincible. Like life's not going to get me anytime soon. Because of course, like when I'm elderly, like that's when I'll start thinking about it. So I can just do what I want, be where I want, and I'll be okay. But what we've realized now, we've seen people from all walks of life get hit by this thing. And it really has to make us realize how precious our one life is, and it doesn't mean like you got to be going all out, like risking everything, like you're, out in the wild, like Bear Grylls sort of thing. But if you choose to do that, that's you. But I've also kind of thought about, there's a lot of things, I guess, on my spirit personally that I've always kind of been scared to put out there because you're not sure of the result. But when you think about your mortality, it's like when you're gone, you're gone. Like this, that you're not going to have those thoughts anymore. You can't let that stuff kind of like stay in the back. So, you know, for example, if there's a toxic relationship that you need to get out of, you need to get out of that now. Like that's the thing. Like COVID has kind of opened the door to that because you're really seeing who's in your corner now when times are dark. Like this is the darkest that times have been for a lot of people. Yeah. Whether we want to admit it or not. And you really like see who's in your corner when times get dark. And so those toxic relationships, you got to let them go. Like the 1, 2, 3, 4, however many crushes that you have. I'm talking to my audience out there because I know everybody but me is married on this. You know, we're going to talk about that later. Anyway, I'm still trying to give them the first date. Anyway, if you care about somebody, if you're thinking about somebody, if you like you had a grudge and like you need to let it go, like this is the time to do all that stuff. This is the time to put all that, get it off your chest, because that's just another mental weight that gets lifted.
Yep.
So when we talk about self-care, it's that type of stuff. If you started something way back when and you've got 15 projects that are unfinished, look at one, start with one, finish that one. And then once you do that, again, think about the weight that would be lifted. Like this, that's the biggest thing I wanted to hit on with this is like 2020 is showing you tomorrow is not promised. We have we've never been in control.
Yeah.
No matter how much we think like we have grips on our schedules and we're booked and we're busy and all that kind of stuff, we don't have control. So it's trying to switch in a little bit to what we were talking about for like, how do we keep the team safe? How do we, you know, protect ourselves and our teams? You know, the hardest thing with all this is we've seen it too with events where people are signing COVID waivers. Like that is tough, but it's necessary. Like, and I mean that partially from a business standpoint, but also like we have to know that the risks are out there and you can't say you didn't know the risk before you take the job. But then it's also up to us as all of us as organizers to say, what do we need to do on our ends to make sure our team is protected? And I know like personally, like Aijne and I, we're working on a wedding next month. Yep. You know, I just did my first COVID wedding at the beginning of this month. So you're taking in a lot of things that you're seeing, like things you're analyzing. And I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do for this. This is what we need to do for that. So for example, when we think about microphones, right?
Oh yeah.
Making sure that everybody has their own microphone. Cause please don't think like, Aijne, I'm telling you how to do your job as a sound person. I'm only saying that because these are things I'm noticing again, like how I can help to keep somebody else safe. Mm-hmm. So like if you got 3 people doing toasts, maybe you have, you know, 2 mics. If you only got 2 mics, when one person uses that one, give it back to the sound team, let them clean it off, you switch it out. I mean, that's what they were doing at John Lewis's funeral. I don't know if people were watching that, but the way they were changing those mics out and switching things and cleaning them down, it was so much precision, but it showed like, hey, we're watching out for everybody. Like we're taking this into account. So I guess I'm also curious too, from you all, kind of what have you all been thinking about when you're thinking like, how do we keep our team safe in this new time and moving forward?
I definitely think mics were one of the top ones to think about, because it's also, people don't think about, we're giving mics to the audience. You know, I mean, that is a thing. So obviously we had talked to Aijne about that and how to manage equipment and things like that. I think it's also figuring out how to, and we haven't had this situation yet because we haven't had any weddings with anything but like 1 or 2 musicians, which is very easy to distance, very easy to keep everyone separate. But we do have a wedding coming up in October with singers and a keyboardist and a saxophonist. And even though it's a small group of people,
a lot of guests.
A lot of guests. It's a small group of our people, but we have to figure out a way to have even like, I don't want to call it a fence. Like you think about concerts where they have the barrier that guests can't go past, but something like that, you know.
Stanchion.
I can tell you about that too, like once you finish.
Yeah, I mean, we have to now think about staging involving distancing. And so is that going to be, like Lauren said, a rope and stanchion? Is that going to be some kind of
drum shields
barrier? Yeah, I thought about that too. A whole wall of drum shields.
Totally normal.
You have 5.
It sound awesome.
And it's going to look amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that's the other thing is like, we also have to think about the look. And so it's like, you know, in the space, you know, we're doing a walkthrough for this wedding on Friday. I don't know that we have 6 feet as well as a footprint for the team. I don't know, you know, but we have to figure that out. And we have to figure out how can we make sure guests aren't going up to the musicians, you know? I mean, they don't do it as much anyway when we're there because we can run interference, but it's still a thing. It's still something we have to think about. And even bringing the team in, you know, making sure that, I don't know if we have everyone gather and then escort everyone and try and help make sure there's not a bunch of people around. I don't know. And we also all know the craziness of loading it at an event. There's a bunch of people loading in at an event. So how do we manage all that? And I think it's going to be a learning process. I think we're going to all have, you know, best laid plans. And then when we get in the moment, we figure out what's working, what's not, and then adjusting for the next one. And then coming up with protocols of our own that we can help unroll and also get the musicians' feedback and help people feel like they're safe, taken care of, all that kind of stuff.
The cool thing that I saw work out with this first COVID wedding that I did, and by the way, if you all can see, I'm on a watch party on my page, but I saw that Cash mentioned me in a comment, and I don't know what she said. So if y'all, I mean, actually, can we go to that real quick?
Jarreau, I agree.
Oh, okay. Whatever you agree with, yeah, girl. Yeah, shout out to Cash, because like I said, again, when I saw that, I was like, hey, that's our team right there. And I may not be necessarily like Lucy Black team, but you get what I'm saying. Like I consider that my family. I consider that my band family. So I'm like, and for me as a band leader and as an entrepreneur myself, like the one that's out here booking events for my team, these are all things that I'm taking into account. So with that being said, these were some of the things that I saw at a quote unquote COVID wedding, because we may be using that term for the next year or so. I'm just putting it out there. These are some things that I noticed that worked. So, you know, if anybody's a musician, entertainer, whatever, events industry, might want to take some notes. First thing that I noticed was that they had all musicians, didn't matter. Yep, there you go. Take your air notes. They had all musicians come in through the loading dock. Now, this was this particular venue that I was at. I'm not naming names or anything like that, but this particular venue it didn't matter if you were a vocalist or you were a drummer or you were a sound person, a planner. It didn't matter what your role was. If you're a vendor, everybody was coming in through the loading dock. You had to check in. You had to take your temperature before entering the building. And then as soon as you're in the building, your mask is on at all times. That was their protocol. So even as businesses, if a business doesn't say that, it can still be on us to say for our team, when you check in, your mask is on in the building at all times. Because for me, the way I approach business, I don't want any client saying anything negative about us and what we didn't do. Yeah. You know, that's just how I approach it. That's just how I run it. And so that was one thing that I noticed. Then when we were on stage, we had masks off, but they were nearby. you know? So then whenever we were on break, masks were on. We never left the stage. And I know for me personally, that's hard because I like to interact with guests. I like to get on the dance floor with everybody, but we were very strict that nobody leaves the stage at any time. And I've seen clients even do that for regular gigs because they didn't want, you know, the band out on the dance floor, which is fine. The other interesting thing, the last big thing that I noticed, aside from microphones, was the fact that I guess the client had worked with the florist, and what the florist did, the florist set up a barrier using flowers and shrubs and those type of things. Like that was already a part of the plan. So I thought that was pretty cool because immediately that sets up that necessary barrier between the musicians and the guests. You know, it's like you, as a guest, you can only go so far because the floral arrangement is in the way, or it's like, you know, kind of as that separator. So I noticed that. And so the other thing the last thing I want to say with that is, I make sure that any client that I have talked to over these past couple of months, the first thing that I ask them now is, does the venue have a COVID procedure document? Because I know most venues have had to figure out, hey, if we're going to reopen, how are we going to do this? Because there's also, you know, times that you could get fined for not following that code. So those are the things I wanted to point out that I know could help our team overall. But again, it just makes it reestablishes that sense of self-care, because the less obstacles you can take out of the equation for anxiety and worry, you can come into the gig feeling that much better, and you don't have to deal with all those X factors before you get there.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of like what you just said, you know, the taking out some of that anxiety, I think that's a big thing in general right now. And it's really hard when a lot of things cause anxiety and there's a lot of things we don't have control over, but being able to, Jarreau, you said something a while ago about projects you might've had that you were working on and just bring out one. That's kind of what I've been trying to think of, is like, how can I do one thing that is a positive thing for the business? And then I can do one thing that's a positive thing for me, right? And being able to recognize where we're struggling, being able to recognize what's causing anxiety, what's a trigger, like we talked about a little bit before, and acknowledge it, you know, acknowledge these things, being able to rest in this is what it is, and be kind to yourself that this is triggering you, you know, and especially now when we've got months of lots of things happening, you know, being able to put something in. Like for me personally, I always have loved yoga, but I started getting more consistent. Having my yoga once a day has been huge because it is mental and physical and spiritual, and it's kind of an all-encompassing, like, okay, this is something I can do and I have control over, and I can make a positive moment. And letting go is something that's a hard thing to say because you can't let go of a pandemic, right? We all can admit that. But we can adjust our thinking. It's like, okay, I can't stop it. I can't make it go away, but I can do X, Y, and Z. You know, I can do something positive, even though it doesn't look like anything positive. And back to our team, you know, that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is, you know, being able to get the team back together to even rehearse. You know, I don't quite know, once Aijne has a baby and we're not allowed to use his backyard anymore, I don't know, maybe what's the safest way to do that? I know, you laugh. but those are things I think we do need to all strive to figure out. How can you fit something new in that brings you joy, that brings you mental peace, you know, even just binge watching a show. That's not, I think that everyone in America has probably been like, oh yeah, I did that, you know, because you're just like, you're checking out and it's okay, you know.
Or learning something new, picking up a new hobby, or, you know, I've always wanted to do X, and you can do it, you know, in your home, if it's something like that.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's also sewing. Very, you know, it's just taking that time with yourself and, you know, focusing on something new that can shut out all of that crazy that's happening. And I know we got into a lot of stuff prior to this about fatigue, you know, really trying to make sure we're staying current with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's not over, it's not going away, and trying to stay present and stay strong and keep, you know, being allies and making sure that we do, you know, enough to help with that is something that you know, you get tired, and you have to find these things to give yourself the time to reset so that you can be strong and you can have that voice and you can be, you know, the best version of yourself for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing.
And the biggest thing moving forward with that, Lauren, like what you're talking about, is, again, it's just, I know the fatigue part of it is just because there's been so much information being thrown out in a short period of time. Yeah. But it's because, you know, we're all home that we can process it. But again, I think it's just putting it in a way that for the people who still don't get it, again, just trying to find the ways that you relate it to them, you know, not necessarily like pushing it on them, because after a while you just find you just see like, okay, who really wants to learn and who really doesn't care. And I think that has been a little bit more fatiguing than anything. But, you know, like you said, you just sort of shift your focus, you know, to what you care about the most and what kind of brings you the most joy. And then, you know, you kind of build yourself back up from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you guys are just tuning in, if you're tuning in late, just so you know, we're talking about self-care. And being that we are in the entertainment industry, we got into a discussion about, you know, COVID and the social distancing and being on events, but still taking care of ourselves. Now, I actually want to mention, since Cash is still on, I actually want to mention, so I don't want to get into details, but we went to an event. Cash was there, her husband was there, and they had brought their dog along. And I don't know if they noticed that I noticed this, but we're speaking about self-care. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there are things that all of us can do to care for ourselves, to protect ourselves, to make sure we are in a positive position to make impact, to make change. And part of that is remaining healthy, right? And having that type of self-care. Well, Cash and Earl always have these black spray bottles, and people are like, what's in those bottles? And they're like, oh, it's alcohol. So you always just see them spraying random things around them, spraying everything that they're touching. Always,
they spray karma too.
So check this out. I saw them spraying their dog, and I was like, what in the world? They're spraying their dog with alcohol. And then I was like, that's crazy, because everybody wants to run up and pet the dog and breathe on the dog and talk to the dog and all this kind of stuff. And they're doing everything in their power to remain clean and to have self-care. And what I'm saying is we need to be, that's a great analogy in life, is we need to make sure that we make a concerted effort to care for ourselves, whether that's mentally, whether that's physically, whether that's emotionally, because it's extremely important, not just to us, not just to our well-being, not just to our lives, but to those around us. Like Jarreau was saying earlier, some people depend on us financially. Some people depend on us as the leader of the household. Other people depend on us to create avenues for them to be able to succeed in life. Other people depend on us not to get them sick, for instance, if we live in the same household with them. So everybody has to do their specific part to keep their mental health, to keep their physical health, and really just to care for themselves for a better quality of life for us and everybody around them. So I wanted to ask you guys before we go, what are some of the reasons you believe that self-care is so important? And if I touched on it, go ahead and expound upon it. But we haven't talked about we talked about self-care, but we haven't talked about the actual importance of it. So I want to come to you, Jarreau, if that's okay, and ask, you've been doing a lot to take care of yourself, and you've been doing a lot to battle depression and stuff like that. Instead of just curling up in the ball and just sitting there for a week and just checking out and not really trying to press through it, why? Why is that important to you? And you touched on it a little bit earlier.
Fact of the matter is, I mean, I got bills to pay.
Yeah.
You know, bill collectors ain't waiting for me to get mentally better. I mean, I just got my, letter from the IRS as a reminder that I got to pay my taxes by a certain date. They don't care what your situation is, But the other reason why I keep going is because, like I said, as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to, not everybody is in a fortunate situation where they might have somebody else living with them that can kind of help to balance some of the costs. So, I mean, to answer your question, it's part of because I know that there are people depending on me. And I know that there are people who are better when I'm better. Yeah. So I have to constantly take that into account, even when I'm feeling my lowest of the low and I don't feel like doing stuff. Some days I just don't do it. And some days I do curl up in a ball. I'm gonna be honest about it. There were a couple of days, like last week especially, it was really hard for me to get out of bed. I stayed in bed probably about 4 hours longer than I needed to because I didn't want to get up. Yeah. But then I'm like, I gotta pitch this new song. I gotta let people know I got new music coming out. I gotta let people know I got gigs coming. I gotta let the band know what this is, what's going on with this. So again, there's those people who are depending on me to help them. So that self-care in a way is almost like me caring about them to get it done,
So to that very point, let me ask you real quick. So for anybody else who's struggling like you or like so many other people are, how are you able to help others? Because for instance, you're on this forum right now with us, right? But admittedly, you had a really rough day. You had struggles throughout the day, and it was kind of hard for you to push back. I noticed earlier, Jarreau was kind of unresponsive, and normally Jarreau's right on it with text messages. So I was kind of like, dude, you okay? And I won't go into too much detail there, but you're on this forum here trying to help so many other people. How are you able to help people? How is it that you're able to kind of lift people up through your struggles?
Man, it's just in my DNA. I anytime I try to ask why, it's just in my DNA. That's just really what it is. Because I don't want people feeling the way I feel. That's really what it is. I don't want people to be in this zone that I'm in. So I'm like, if I can prevent somebody from being in that or getting to that point, then I just got to do what I got to do. And full disclosure, I was fine today until about 12:30. And then it just hit me. And I could feel it. And I told myself, I was out at Haynes Point today trying to get some fresh air. And then next thing you know, I said, I got to go home because I need to take a nap. I've been having to do that a lot more now. And I just have to come to grips with that. This is what this thing is doing to me right now. And I have to fight it, but that's how I fight it. And again, I don't want you or Becca or Lauren or anybody that I care about to feel that same way or feel like there's no way out because they're seeing everybody's highlights. They're seeing everybody's good things that are happening. Me and some real stuff,
To piggyback on what you said, and I think it's super important for people to remember, is you said you needed a nap today. And I love that you said that because that small, simple thing of taking a few hours, probably, that's what I would do, No, really. I need like a few hours because if I fall asleep, I gotta have time to wake up.
I don't understand cat naps. I don't get it.
Cat nap. I gotta have some time. But to be able to say to yourself, that's fine. I'll give myself that time and then I'll move on. And then it might happen again tomorrow. And that's okay. Because you're right. Taking care of you and being able to focus on what you need gives you the ability to then take care of others, because you do. I mean, that's something I love about you, Jarreau, is you have such a joy that you spread to people, even when you're not feeling it. And I admire you so much, because I think everyone who knows you knows that you're going to be real with them either way. And that's a gift, you know, and it's something that all of us need to think that way, that if we're not our best, the people who rely on us and love us aren't their best. And so, you know, that's important for all of us to remember.
And just knowing like we're not perfect. I've done a lot of wrong in my life to get to this point where I'm so aware of my shortcomings and aware of my emotions and things like that. It's because of a lot of the mistakes that I've made across the, you know, the fact of my life. Like how many times, like, let's just be real. That's the mental thing that affects this too. And I know we got to wrap up in a little bit, but it's just the sense of when you have that depressive trigger, it's not only the thing that triggered it that enters your head. It can be something from last week. It can be something from 2 months ago. It can be something from 10 years ago that enters your mind when all these things start compiling. And then it's like, what do you do? Because there are invisible forces at work to tell you, trying to tell you you're not good enough, or trying to tell you you don't measure up, or trying to tell you that you'll never get to where you want to be. And I mean, I don't know if you guys saw my Facebook post earlier this week. It's like 2020 was supposed to be that year for all of us, right? Like all of us were like, 2020 is about to be popping.
Let's talk about that.
Lives about to change in 2020. And they changed, but not in the way that we wanted. You know, like I don't know about you. I had planned for this to be the most lucrative year of my career by far. Yeah. You know, I had made a lot of strides in the almost 3 years now that I've been a full-time, you know, performer. And I was ready to make that next leap, even to the point where it was like, I'm going to get out of my house finally. Yeah. I'm going to be able to be, or at least one step closer to the man that I want to be, so that hopefully one day I can be in a position where I can start a family and I can achieve the things in my life that I want to do. But God and COVID had other plans. But at the same time, it's like we all had to step back and use two words that we don't like using in America: slow down. Yeah. And really ask ourselves, what do we really, really need in life? Yeah. Not what we want, not what we want to get. What do we really need? So I just, you know, we have to take the necessary time for ourselves, whether that is an hour for a nap, or is a day, or is 3 days, or you just decide like, yo, this week I ain't got it.
Or 6 donuts.
Right. That's the other thing. Like, don't even get me started on emotional eating. Because the fact that I have not gained a massive amount of weight during this pandemic is a blessing in itself, because I'm a very emotional eater. And that's another thing that I've had to battle in my life, is like, when I'm feeling sad, I go to the drive-thru. It's a real thing. And like you said, like, instead of eating the 1 or 2 cookies or donuts, you eating 6, or you eating a dozen. And it's like, look, you can't be ashamed of that. Like, the amount of stress that we're all compiling right now on top of everything else we were already dealing with is massive.
Just give yourself that freedom.
And if you want to eat a dozen donuts today, eat a dozen donuts, but then wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what, I'm going to take a walk today, and I'm going to walk a little farther than what I normally would have. And I'm going to just do that for 2 days in a row.
To the other donut shop. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep. Take you a donut tour. Just walk a little bit farther after you
Right.
get them donuts.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Good people. This is what I want to do. I want to. We're gonna wrap it up here. We're about to get up out of here, but I want to go around and kind of do a quick send off. I'm gonna start it off just so none of y'all take mine. But what I want to do is just give one self-care tip. What I would say to you guys is, for me personally, I do sound. I love sound. I breathe sound. That's what I do. Live sound. I love it. So I like to get out in the garage, put something together, throw some music on, mix, whatever the case is. So for me, I would say to you guys, find what you are passionate about, as long as it's not maiming or killing somebody. Find what you are passionate about and do it. If it's walking, if it's climbing a tree, if it's going out by the fire and you making s'mores, whatever it is, do it regularly. More so than ever, we have the time. Not everybody, but most of us have the time now. So just do it, enjoy it, soak it up, and enjoy that part of life and not live so much in the negative. Sometimes turn that off and just enjoy that one thing. Let's go to Jarreau, and then we'll wrap up with Lucy Black.
One self-care tip, the work will still be there. So whatever that is, whatever checklist you make for yourself, just know if you don't have it on a certain day or you're not fully 100%, work with the percentage that you do have and see what you can get done with that. And whatever work you don't get done that day, the work will still be there tomorrow. And there's no reason to guilt yourself for not getting everything done that you wanted to do.
Since Rebecca's muted, let's go to Lauren.
Yeah, mine is kind of along the lines of Aijne's. Find things that bring you joy, that you can add into your day, that you're passionate about. I find the days that I forget to turn on music in the morning, or I don't have, that at all, I'm like, why do I feel a little sad or off today? Because I haven't had that music that brings me joy. It hasn't, enlivened me that day. So just remember those little things, or donuts, that you can just insert into your day to bring that happiness and joy, while we're all stuck inside and dealing with everything else.
Yeah. And I think for me, like, I know I said it before, but like really having a routine with yoga has been amazing. And I'll give a shout out to Yoga with Adrienne. If anyone doesn't know what she does, I'm telling you guys, I have sent, I think, everyone on here her links. Maybe not Aijne. I'm not sure I've sent it to you. But I'm telling you, like, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I love about what she does versus just doing any yoga program is she always talks about finding what feels good for you in the moment, whatever's happening for you right now. Also, self-love is a big thing. Loving yourself, loving where you are, what you can do, what you can't do, and moving on from there is super important, because like that mindset has been super helpful for me right now, because it actually helps me want to do more, because we know, I mean, like, I know if both Lauren and I decide to take a week off, Lucy Black's not going to get any money in, and that's a real problem. So, I feel like that's been a huge, huge thing for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
But I know, like you said, the last thing to wrap up, and of course, this is me doing what's in my DNA. Becca and Lauren, the thing I want the two of you to remember is that even though business is not where you want it to be right now, the good deeds that both of you are doing, not just for yourselves, but also for your community and for your team, that stuff will not be forgotten. That stuff is not going unnoticed. And because of that, your business is going to expand tenfold. I'm putting that into existence because of the work that you're doing right now. Even when you're not making money, you realize how important your team is, and you value your team, and you put your love and effort into your team over the checks and balances of the finances. And I think by recognizing that, I just want you to stay encouraged that is going to pay off. Aijne, the way that you put yourself out here for the people that you care about, it helps more people than you know. And it keeps everybody uplifted, because I specifically making it for me, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, is the way that you have helped me this summer. Because when I needed to put together these virtual concerts, because I was trying to get my band paid, I wasn't even really worrying. It wasn't even about me.
Right.
I'm thinking about Chris. I'm thinking about Cornell. I'm thinking about Brandon. I'm thinking about Eric. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about Lucy Black. I'm thinking about all these other people that I'm trying to keep the profits flowing in some form or fashion. And the way that you, and I would even say Crystal and Kai, like stepped up and helped us out is, I mean, it was a blessing, man. It was a godsend. And you didn't think about money first, even when, we was like, dog, I need to give you something. Like, please let me help you with something. You didn't, that wasn't your first thought, because you knew what was going to stem from it. And I think all of us realize that we're going to be in business together for a long time. This is just because COVID is keeping us down right now, doesn't mean that we're going to be out forever. So the fact that we've all been able to hang tight to each other during this time has been very valuable. So again, I just want to keep all of you encouraged. And Aijne, like, I just want to thank you, man, just for being a brother, being a positive male figure in my life when I really haven't had many of them, to be honest. I just haven't. And so having a brother that you can depend on, and having somebody that you can call no matter how crazy the idea is at the time, and trying to make the idea come to life, we need that. So I appreciate you just for being that selfless person that you are, and just doing it for the right reasons.
We echo that too. Oh, everything he just said.
You all hear how Jarreau just complimented everyone. He's feeling low, and he has just spent however many minutes being so wonderful.
And this is why I love Jarreau. Like, literally, this is one of my favorite things about you, Jarreau, is you're such an encourager, and I love it. And we think the world of you as a person, but even just this whole idea, this was an idea I had, and I called Jarreau. I'm like, Jarreau, do something.
I mean, this is what people need right now. And that's because I've seen too many people leave this world too soon, not knowing how appreciated they were, not knowing how loved they were. And that's like, I mean, even now, like when we're talking about COVID, seeing people die in hospitals alone, with no family, no friends, nothing. And that I can't fathom what that feels like for anybody, but it's important for all of us in this time, no matter our differences, to just call a friend up and say, hey, I appreciate you. Hey, I love you. Hey, I care about you. Hey, I'm struggling right now, but just know I'll be here. Whatever that is, because I don't want y'all feeling the way I'm feeling right now. I don't. It's not a good feeling, and I didn't it's just the human condition.
Yeah. Well, look, there's no way to properly segue from that, but we thank you guys immensely for tuning in, for rocking with us, for every week, for dropping comments to us personally, to text messages, to everything. You don't have to necessarily be seen or be known to make an impact. So we thank you guys for that love, that support, for continuing to invest, for sharing the videos, for everything, for us personally and for other people, because we're about other people. So we thank you guys for that. Thank you for your comments. Cash, what's up? Shout out to you. Everybody, you guys, make sure you're calling your neighbor, checking on your neighbor, call a friend, send somebody a text message. Make sure you spray your dogs and your cats with alcohol. Make sure you do all of that self-care stuff. Do some yoga. Make sure you do some backflips, all that. And we'll catch you guys really soon on the next one. So on behalf of Jarreau, JWX, as well as Lucy Black and Upper Octave Productions, this is Let Us Breathe, and we thank you guys so much.